Officer Marcus Whitfield had been with the Phoenix Police Department for exactly 18 months when he walked into a situation that would destroy his career before it truly began and cost the city $6.9 million. He was 24 years old, fresh enough out of the academy to still believe that his instincts trumped evidence, but experienced enough to know he was making a choice. One Saturday afternoon in a suburban Target, he responded to a call about suspected return fraud and saw a black woman at customer service with 3 shopping bags. What Whitfield did next, ignoring her receipt, dismissing her federal credentials, and handcuffing her in front of dozens of weekend shoppers, would become proof that even 18 months on the job is enough time to internalize the kind of racial profiling that destroys trust, ends careers, and costs cities millions. A black woman in her early 40s, Special Agent Keisha Daniels, stood at the Target customer service counter with 3 bags of children's clothing she'd purchased the day before. Her receipt was in her hand. Her FBI credentials were in her purse, clipped to her belt beneath her jacket. No theft, no fraud, no crime, just a federal agent returning clothes that didn't fit her daughter before heading home to start her weekend. But Officer Whitfield saw her through a lens so warped by assumption that he couldn't process a black woman with shopping bags as anything other than suspicious. Before we continue, where are you watching from? If this is your first time here, please hit that subscribe button. Stories like these need to be shared, and your support helps us bring more truth to light. The Target at Desert Ridge Marketplace sits on North Tatum Boulevard in Phoenix, Arizona. It's a massive 2-story location anchored in one of the city's more affluent shopping districts. The kind of place where families stock up on school supplies in August, where retirees browse home goods on weekday mornings, where the parking lot fills every weekend with SUVs and crossovers. Inside, red and white signage glows under fluorescent lights. Wide aisles stretch between clothing racks, electronics displays, and grocery sections. The customer service counter sits near the front entrance, visible to anyone walking through the automatic doors. It was 2:45 p.m. on a Saturday in late September. The Arizona sun blazed outside, pushing temperatures past 105 degrees. Inside, air conditioning kept the store comfortably cool. The weekend shopping rush was in full swing. Families pushed overflowing carts. Teenagers clustered around the electronics section. The customer service line had 5 people waiting. Behind the counter, 2 employees processed returns, exchanges, and questions with practiced efficiency. The atmosphere was ordinary, mundane. The kind of Saturday afternoon where nothing dramatic typically happens. Parents buy groceries, kids beg for toys. Returns get processed without incident, until a security guard made a phone call that would change multiple lives forever. Special Agent Keisha Daniels had been with the FBI for 14 years. 14 years of investigating financial crimes, tracking money laundering operations, building cases against corporate fraud that required thousands of hours of documentation and analysis. She'd worked undercover operations in Miami, coordinated multi-state investigations from Phoenix, and testified before federal grand juries in cases that resulted in convictions carrying decades of prison time. Her supervisors called her meticulous. Her colleagues called her relentless. The agents she'd trained called her the best teacher they'd ever had. At 42 years old, Daniels was exactly where she'd earned the right to be, a senior special agent in the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit, respected by federal prosecutors, trusted by her team, known for building cases so airtight that defense attorneys rarely bothered to take them to trial. She'd received 3 commendations in the past 5 years alone: the Director's Award for Excellence, the Attorney General's Distinguished Service Award, recognition from the Department of Justice for her work dismantling a $40 million mortgage fraud scheme that had destroyed hundreds of families. Daniels had graduated summa cum laude from Howard University, with degrees in accounting and criminal justice, then earned her MBA from Georgetown while working full-time as a financial analyst for the Treasury Department. She'd been recruited by the FBI during her 2nd year at Treasury, passed the grueling 21-week training program at Quantico with top marks in her class, and spent her first 5 years in the Bureau's Miami field office before transferring to Phoenix. She'd published research on emerging patterns in cryptocurrency fraud. She'd lectured at the FBI Academy on forensic accounting techniques. She'd received board certification in financial forensics from the American College of Forensic Examiners. Her professional credentials filled 2 pages of her personnel file. Degrees, certifications, specialized training, awards, commendations. At 42, Daniels lived in Scottsdale with her husband, a high school teacher, and their 9-year-old daughter, Maya. She coached Maya's youth soccer team on weekends when her caseload allowed. She volunteered with a nonprofit that provided financial literacy training to underserved communities. She ran 5Ks to raise money for cancer research in memory of her mother, who died when Keisha was 23. She was the first person in her family to graduate from college, the first to earn an advanced degree, the first to work in federal law enforcement. Her parents, both retired postal workers in Baltimore, still kept newspaper clippings of every award she'd received, every case that made the news, every achievement they'd once thought was impossible for a black girl from East Baltimore. That Saturday, Daniels had spent the morning at her daughter's soccer game, then stopped at Target around noon to buy clothes for Maya's upcoming school week. She'd purchased 3 bags worth of items: shirts, pants, a jacket, some socks, using her credit card. The transaction processed normally, the receipt printed. She'd taken the bags home, let Maya try everything on, and realized half of it was the wrong size. She'd returned to Target around 2:30 p.m. to exchange the items. She wore jeans, a navy blue blouse, and sneakers. Her FBI credentials were clipped to her belt beneath her lightweight jacket. Standard protocol for agents, even off duty. Her service weapon was locked in her car's gun safe. She wasn't working. She wasn't investigating anyone. She wasn't on official business. She looked like what she was, a professional woman in her 40s returning clothes that didn't fit her daughter. She'd done nothing to attract attention. She'd spoken to no one except the customer service employees. She'd violated no store policy, no law, no rule of any kind. But to one person in that Target, Daniels's presence was a problem. Store security guard Thomas Brennan, 19 years old and 6 weeks into his first retail job, watched her approach the customer service counter with 3 bags and decided something was wrong. He couldn't articulate what. Just a feeling. Just instinct. Just the same assumption that's led to thousands of similar confrontations. A black woman with shopping bags must be returning stolen merchandise. And Brennan decided to call the police. Officer Marcus Whitfield graduated from the Phoenix Police Academy in March, 18 months before that Saturday afternoon. 24 years old. Military veteran, college dropout. The kind of recruit who'd scored well enough on exams but struggled with the nuances of de-escalation training, struggled with scenarios that required judgment over force, struggled with the concept that being suspicious isn't the same as being guilty. His academy instructors had noted concerns. Multiple evaluations flagged his tendency to escalate minor situations. His role-playing scenarios often ended with unnecessary physical contact. His written reports repeatedly used language that instructors flagged as potentially discriminatory. But he'd passed. Barely. And 18 months later, he was on patrol, still convinced that his gut feelings were more reliable than evidence. In 18 months, Whitfield had already accumulated 4 formal complaints. 4 complaints in a year and a half, a pace that should have triggered immediate supervisory intervention. 4 complaints that told a story his department chose to ignore. Whitfield stopped a black teenager on a bicycle in a predominantly white neighborhood, demanding ID and proof the bike wasn't stolen. The teenager lived 2 blocks away. The bike was a birthday gift from his parents. The parents filed a formal complaint citing racial profiling. Resolution: verbal counseling. No documentation in permanent file. Whitfield detained a black woman in a grocery store parking lot, convinced. She was loading stolen items into her car. She had receipts for every item. The store manager confirmed the purchases. She filed a complaint. Resolution: conflict resolution training, 1-day workshop, complaint closed. Whitfield questioned a black man sitting in his own car outside his own apartment, insisting the man prove he lived there. The man was a college professor waiting for his wife. He showed his license with the address. Whitfield still ran his information for warrants. Complaint filed, resolution, written reprimand, sensitivity training scheduled. Whitfield stopped a black family at a public park, claiming they looked suspicious near the playground. The family was having a picnic. All four children were visibly related to their parents. The father, a local attorney, filed a formal complaint with the department and the NDAACP. Resolution: mandatory cultural competency course. Complaint sustained, but no suspension. 4 complaints, every single one involving black citizens engaged in completely legal activities. Every single one documenting Whitfield's pattern of seeing black people as inherently suspicious. Every single one resolved with training that clearly wasn't working. When Whitfield received the call about suspected return fraud at Target, he was already primed to see what he expected to see. Security reported a suspicious woman attempting to return items, possibly stolen. No actual evidence of theft. No security footage of shoplifting. Just suspicion. Just a feeling. Just enough for Whitfield to arrive ready to make an arrest. He walked through Target's automatic doors at 2:43 p.m., saw Daniels at customer service with shopping bags, and made his decision before asking a single question. The security guard pointed her out. Whitfield approached. His hand moved instinctively to his radio. His body language shifted to confrontation mode. In his mind, this was an open and shut case. Catch the thief. Make the arrest. Add another win to his record. What he didn't consider, what 18 months of policing and 4 complaints hadn't taught him, was the possibility that a black woman with shopping bags might actually be exactly what she claimed to be. Daniels stood at the customer service counter, receipt in hand, explaining to the employee that several items were the wrong size, and she needed to exchange them. The employee, a woman in her 50s named Carol, was processing the return in the system when Thomas Brennan, the security guard, approached. "I think you should call the police." The employee looked up, confused. "Why would I call the police? This return looks suspicious. I think the merchandise might be stolen." Daniels turned to face him directly. "I have my receipt. Everything was purchased yesterday with my credit card." Brennan stepped closer, his radio crackling at his hip. "A lot of people come in with fake receipts." Carol glanced between them, clearly uncomfortable. "The receipt is legitimate. It's in our system. The purchase shows up. I still think we should call it in." This is where assumptions become accusations, where a routine return transforms into a criminal investigation based on nothing more than the presence of a black woman with shopping bags, where every explanation is automatically suspect, every piece of evidence automatically questioned, every credential automatically doubted. Carol picked up the phone. She called the store manager first, hoping to resolve the situation without escalating. But Brennan had already radioed the police. Suspicious person at customer service. Possible return fraud. Officer Whitfield arrived 6 minutes later. He walked through the entrance, saw Daniels standing at the counter, saw the 3 Target bags at her feet, saw a black woman where his bias told him a criminal should be. He didn't ask questions. He didn't review evidence. He didn't speak to the employee processing the return. He walked directly to Daniels with his hand on his belt, his body language already screaming authority. "Ma'am, I need you to come with me." Daniels turned, saw the uniform, felt the familiar weight of frustration and exhaustion that comes from being treated like a suspect for existing while black. "Excuse me? I'm returning items I purchased yesterday. Store security says you're attempting to return stolen merchandise. I have my receipt right here." She held it up. "The store employee just confirmed these items were purchased yesterday with my credit card. There's no issue here." Whitfield didn't look at the receipt, didn't ask to see the credit card, didn't verify with Carol that the return was legitimate. A lot of people have fake receipts. "You need to come outside now." The store had gone quiet. Other customers were watching now. Phones were coming out. This was the moment. The moment where Daniels could have escalated her tone, could have demanded a supervisor, could have made the kind of scene that gives police the excuse they're looking for. She didn't. Instead, she reached beneath her jacket, removed her credentials from her belt, and held them up calmly, professionally, the way she'd identified herself hundreds of times during investigations. "Officer, I'm Special Agent Keisha Daniels, FBI, Financial Crimes Division. I've done nothing wrong. I purchased these items yesterday. I'm returning what doesn't fit my daughter. The employee has confirmed the transaction. There is no crime here." She spoke clearly, slowly, making sure every word registered, making sure everyone watching could hear exactly what was happening. Whitfield looked at the credentials, saw the FBI seal, saw the badge, saw her photo, saw everything that should have ended this interaction immediately. Sure you are. Hands behind your back. This is where ignorance transforms into danger, where a rookie cop's ego overrides every piece of evidence held in his hands, where an FBI badge, the kind of credential that opens doors, that commands respect from local law enforcement, that represents 14 years of federal service, is dismissed as fake because the cop holding it can't imagine a black woman earning it legitimately. Daniels's voice remained steady, but her eyes hardened. Officer, those credentials are real. I'm asking you to verify them before you make a mistake you can't undo. I don't need to verify anything. You're coming with me. Whitfield reached for her arm. Daniels pulled back, not aggressively, not combatively, just a reflex to avoid being grabbed. That reflex gave Whitfield the excuse he'd been looking for. Are you resisting? I am not resisting. I am a federal agent asking you to verify my credentials before you do something that will destroy your career. Hands behind your back. Now, a crowd had formed. At least 20 people. Phones recording from multiple angles. Carol, the customer service employee, was speaking urgently into the phone. Someone needs to come to customer service right now. A police officer is trying to arrest an FBI agent. A man in his 60s stepped forward from the crowd. Officer, I watched this whole thing. She's been calm and polite. She showed you her badge. Why don't you just call it in? Whitfield ignored him. Ma'am, last warning. Hands behind your back or I will arrest you for resisting. Daniels locked eyes with him. Officer Marcus Whitfield, badge number 4782. I am Special Agent Keisha Daniels, FBI badge number J2847. I am recording this interaction. I am complying under protest. I will be filing a formal complaint with your department and with my superiors at the Bureau. But I am complying because I want everyone here to see exactly what you're choosing to do, despite having all the evidence you need to walk away. She turned slowly, placed her hands behind her back, and allowed Whitfield to handcuff her. The click of the cuffs echoed through the sudden silence. A woman in the crowd started crying. A teenager shouted, "This is bullshit!" An elderly man shook his head in disgust. Whitfield gripped Daniels's arm and marched her toward the exit. She didn't struggle, didn't pull away, didn't give him any reason to escalate force. She walked with her head up, her expression controlled, her mind already building the case she would bring against him, against his department, against every system that had failed to stop him after 4 previous complaints. The automatic doors opened. The Phoenix heat hit them like a wall. Whitfield led her to his patrol car, placed his hand on top of her head, and guided her into the back seat. The door slammed shut. Inside the store, dozens of witnesses stood frozen, phones still recording. Carol was on the phone with the district manager. The security guard who'd started it all, Thomas Brennan, had vanished to the break room. Multiple customers were already posting videos to social media. Phoenix cop arrests FBI agent for returning clothes at Target. Black federal agent handcuffed at Target customer service while showing badge. Officer refuses to verify FBI. Credentials, arrests agent anyway. The videos started spreading within minutes. Do you think rookie officers with 4 prior discrimination complaints should be placed on administrative duty instead of patrol? Drop your answer below. Whitfield sat in his patrol car writing his report. Daniels sat in the back seat, handcuffed, still processing the surreal reality of being arrested while holding both her receipt and her FBI badge. Whitfield's radio crackled. This is Sergeant Williams. What's your status on that Target call? Whitfield clicked the radio. 1 in custody, returning to station. What's the charge? Attempted return fraud. Resisting arrest. There was a pause. Longer than normal. Did you say return fraud? Affirmative. Stand by. Do not transport. 3 minutes later, a supervisor arrived. Sergeant Lisa Williams, 19 years with Phoenix PD, a veteran who'd seen enough officer mistakes to recognize one unfolding in real time. She parked, walked to Whitfield's car, and leaned into the driver's window. What happened? Whitfield explained confidently, as if he'd done everything correctly. Responded to a call about return fraud. Suspect was at customer service with merchandise. She refused to comply. I placed her under arrest. Did she identify herself? Claimed to be FBI. Had fake credentials. Williams's expression shifted. Where are the credentials? Whitfield pulled them from his pocket and handed them over. Williams examined them carefully. The FBI seal, the hologram, the badge, the ID card with Daniel's photo, signature, and badge number. Everything about them screamed authentic. Whitfield, these are real. They could be fake. They're not fake. I've worked with federal agents. I know what their credentials look like. These are real. She returned to her car and made a phone call. Within 3 minutes, she had the FBI Phoenix field office on the line. Badge number J22847, Special Agent Keisha Daniels. Active duty, Financial Crimes Unit. 14 years of service. Williams walked to Whitfield's car, opened the back door, and spoke directly to Daniels. Special Agent Daniels, I am deeply sorry. This should never have happened. I'm removing the handcuffs immediately. She unlocked the cuffs. Daniels rubbed her wrists. Deep red marks were visible where the metal had pressed into her skin for 12 minutes. Are you injured? Daniels's voice was ice. Physically? No. But we both know that's not what you're really asking. Williams nodded. I understand. I'll be filing a report on this incident. Officer Whitfield will face consequences. Whitfield was listening through the open door, his face going pale as reality finally penetrated his certainty. The FBI? She's really FBI. Williams turned to him, her expression colder than Daniels had ever seen on a law enforcement supervisor. You arrested a federal agent for returning children's clothing after she showed you her badge. You ignored her credentials. You ignored witness testimony. You ignored the store employee who confirmed the return was legitimate. You handcuffed a 14-year FBI veteran in front of dozens of customers because you decided her badge was fake. Lieutenant Marcus Hayes arrived within 10 minutes, 23 years on the force, 2 tours in Afghanistan, a reputation for not tolerating incompetence or discrimination. He'd received the call from Williams and had driven from across the city to see this disaster for himself. Hayes spoke to Daniels first, his tone formal and apologetic. Special Agent Daniels, I'm Lieutenant Hayes. On behalf of the Phoenix Police Department, I apologize unreservedly. This is inexcusable. Daniels nodded but said nothing. She was documenting everything. Every word would matter when she filed her complaint. Hayes turned to Whitfield. Badge and weapon. Administrative leave. Effective immediately. Lieutenant, I was responding to a call. You arrested an FBI agent for being black at Target. Give me your badge. Whitfield's hands shook as he handed over his badge and service weapon. For the first time, he seemed to understand what he'd done. For the first time, he looked terrified. Within an hour, the videos had exploded across every platform. Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram. Multiple angles from different witnesses. Daniels showing her badge. Whitfield dismissing it as fake. The handcuffs. The march to the patrol car. The crowd's shocked reactions. FBI agent arrested at Phoenix Target after rookie cop calls badge fake. Federal agent handcuffed while returning children's clothes. Cop refuses to verify credentials. Phoenix PD arrests FBI agent, despite valid badge and receipt. Witnesses call it racial profiling. The outrage was immediate and intense. The FBI issued a statement within 3 hours. We are aware of the incident involving Special Agent Keisha Daniels in Phoenix. The FBI takes any allegation of civil rights violations extremely seriously. We are coordinating with local authorities and will be conducting our own investigation. The Phoenix Police Department issued their own statement. We are investigating an incident involving one of our officers and a federal agent. The officer has been placed on administrative leave pending the outcome of our investigation. But the damage was done. The videos showed everything. A black woman professionally dressed, calmly explaining, showing federal credentials, being arrested anyway. Thomas Brennan, the security guard who started it all, gave a brief statement to Target's corporate investigators. I thought the return looked suspicious. I didn't know she was FBI. I was just doing my job. He was fired within 48 hours. Target issued a formal apology and announced immediate policy changes. No more calls to police based on employee suspicion unless there was clear evidence of actual criminal activity. Civil rights attorneys contacted Daniels within 24 hours. This wasn't just wrongful arrest. This was racial profiling. This was a civil rights violation under federal law. This was proof that even an FBI badge doesn't protect black people from bias when the person holding the badge refuses to see them as legitimate. The lawsuit named Officer Marcus Whitfield, Sergeant Lisa Williams for delayed intervention, Lieutenant Marcus Hayes for supervisory failure, security guard Thomas Brennan, Target Corporation, and the Phoenix Police Department. The claims were extensive and damning. Unlawful arrest without probable cause, false imprisonment violation of federal civil rights under 42 U.S.C., prior of 1983, racial profiling and discrimination, excessive use of force, tight handcuffs, unnecessary detention, intentional infliction of emotional distress, failure to verify credentials despite repeated requests, failure to train and supervise officers with documented patterns of discriminatory policing, negligent hiring and retention. The city's attorneys reviewed the evidence and reached the inevitable conclusion: indefensible. The videos were everywhere. The witnesses were credible. The FBI was involved. The complaint history was damning. They had no case. The city settled within 8 months, paying $6.9 million to Special Agent Keisha Daniels. Target Corporation contributed an additional $1.2 million from their liability insurance. The total settlement, $8.1 million, one of the largest racial profiling settlements in Arizona history. Officer Marcus Whitfield was terminated 6 weeks after the incident. The termination letter was final and devastating. Officer Whitfield arrested a federal law enforcement agent without probable cause, refused to verify legitimate credentials despite multiple requests, engaged in clear racial profiling, and demonstrated a pattern of discriminatory policing. Despite 4 prior sustained complaints and multiple mandatory training interventions, Officer Whitfield continued to demonstrate an inability to police without bias. His employment is terminated immediately. His name will be entered into the National Decertification Index. Whitfield's law enforcement career ended at 24 years old, 18 months after it began. His name is now permanently entered in a national database that prevents him from working in law enforcement anywhere in the country. Thomas Brennan, the security guard, was fired and named in the lawsuit. His name became permanently associated with the incident. He issued a statement. "I made a terrible judgment call based on assumptions I didn't realize I had. I'm sorry, but sorry doesn't undo what happened to Agent Daniels." Should security personnel face legal liability for racially motivated police calls? Let me know in the comments. The Phoenix Police Department faced intense scrutiny. How had Whitfield, with 4 complaints in 18 months, remained on patrol? Why hadn't supervisors removed him after the 2nd complaint? The 3rd? What training existed to prevent officers from arresting federal agents? Internal Affairs conducted a comprehensive review. The findings were damning. 4 complaints in 18 months. 3 sustained multiple witnesses and prior complaints had their statements minimized. Training requirements completed but never assessed for effectiveness. Supervisors who noted problems but took no supervisory action. A system that protected problematic officers over community members. The Department of Justice opened a pattern and practice investigation. Their findings confirmed systemic failure at multiple levels. Federal oversight was implemented. Reforms were announced. Immediate desk duty for any officer with 3 or more sustained discrimination complaints. Mandatory federal credential verification for all arrests. Real-time body camera review for all controversial arrests. Independent Civilian Oversight Board with subpoena power. Quarterly pattern analysis of all officer stops and arrests. Automatic termination at 5 sustained complaints. Special Agent Keisha Daniels testified at Phoenix City Council hearings on police reform. Her testimony was powerful, precise, and damning. "I'm a federal agent with 14 years of experience investigating financial crimes. I've built cases that put criminals in prison for decades. I've testified before grand juries. I've worked undercover. I've coordinated multi-state investigations." She paused. I had my receipt. I had my credit card. I had my FBI credentials, a badge that represents 14 years of federal service, training at Quantico, commendations from the Attorney General. I showed that badge to Officer Whitfield. I identified myself clearly, calmly, professionally. I asked him to verify my credentials before making a mistake he couldn't undo. Another pause. The council chamber was silent. He refused. He called my badge fake. He handcuffed me in front of dozens of people, including children, and arrested me for returning clothes that didn't fit my daughter. And here's what you need to understand. I wasn't arrested because I looked suspicious. I was arrested because I'm black. Because Officer Whitfield couldn't imagine that a black woman could be an FBI agent. Because in his mind, black women with shopping bags are criminals, not federal law enforcement. Her voice strengthened. 4 complaints in 18 months. That's not bad luck. That's not mistakes. That's a pattern. And your department ignored that pattern until it targeted someone with the resources to fight back. 4 black citizens filed complaints documenting the exact same behavior. Racial profiling, unlawful stops, harassment for existing in predominantly white spaces. And every time, Whitfield got a training course and went right back on patrol. She looked directly at the council members. The city is paying me $6.9 million. That's accountability. Officer Whitfield's career is over. That's consequences. But money doesn't undo being handcuffed in front of your community. Termination doesn't erase the message that an FBI badge means nothing if the person holding it is black. She leaned forward. If this can happen to me, with all my credentials, my authority, my resources, what happens to black people without FBI badges? What happens to the teenager on a bike, the woman loading groceries, the man sitting in his own car? What happens to people who don't have the power to fight back? The room remained silent. This wasn't just about one afternoon at Target. This was about a system that kept Marcus Whitfield on patrol, despite 4 complaints in 18 months documenting a clear pattern of racial profiling. This was about a department that treated each complaint in isolation, never connecting the dots, never acknowledging that the same officer targeting the same community repeatedly isn't coincidence. It's culture. Whitfield's record told the story his supervisors chose to ignore. 4 complaints, all 4 involving black citizens engaged in legal activities. All 4 documenting the same assumption: black people don't belong in white spaces. The pattern was clear. The documentation was extensive, but Phoenix PD treated each incident separately, as if a first offense, as if training would somehow undo the bias that drove him to see black people as inherently criminal. Whitfield's career is over. That's justice. The city paid $6.9 million. That's accountability. Target changed their policies. That's progress. But money and terminations don't undo the trauma of being arrested for being black while returning children's clothes. They don't restore the dignity of being handcuffed in front of your community. They don't erase the message that even an FBI badge isn't enough protection from an officer who's decided your credentials must be fake. The real question is, what changes now? Do departments finally remove officers after 3 complaints instead of waiting for the 4th, the 8th, the 11th? Do retailers finally train security to recognize the difference between suspicious behavior and black people existing in their stores? Do we finally acknowledge that looking suspicious often means being black in a space where someone's bias says black people don't belong? Because if we don't fix the systems that kept Whitfield on patrol for 18 months, despite documented complaints, if we don't address the culture that taught Thomas Brennan to see a black woman with a receipt as a criminal, then we're just waiting for the next rookie cop, the next security guard, the next victim, the next viral video. Comment if you believe this should be law. Any law enforcement agency that retains an officer after 3 sustained complaints for racial discrimination faces automatic federal oversight and financial penalties. And if you think these stories need to be told, if you believe accountability starts with awareness and change begins with pressure, then hit that subscribe button. Because we're not stopping. We're going to keep exposing these patterns. We're going to keep demanding better. We're going to keep fighting for the FBI agents, the Target shoppers, the the ordinary people who deserve to exist without being criminalized for their skin color. This isn't just about one officer or one agent. It's about all of us and the world we choose to accept.